Today's story is titled Millionaire Posed as a Janitor Froze When He Heard What the Poor Receptionist Whispered. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The morning begins in the lobby of Carter Holdings, a place where the marble floors shine brighter than most people's futures, and every second is measured in profit. No one knows that the quiet janitor mopping near the front desk is actually Ethan Carter, the 34-year-old millionaire CEO whose face usually appears in magazines, not in supply closets. But today he is not wearing a tailored suit. He is wearing a faded navy uniform, the kind with a stitched patch that reads maintenance. His hair is purposely mussed, his shoulders lowered, his entire frame softened so he can blend into the background. And for the first time in years, Ethan feels invisible. That is exactly what he wants. He is here because he suspects something is wrong inside his company. Department complaints have risen, morale has dropped, and an anonymous letter on his desk last week said, "If you want to know the truth, try standing where we stand." So he did. But nothing prepares him for the voice he hears that morning. At the reception desk sits Mia Turner, 26, exhausted but trying her best to smile through another 12-hour shift. Her cardigan is too thin for the freezing air conditioning, her fingers are red from sorting packages and checking visitors in. She thinks no one sees her. She thinks no one hears her. Ethan glances up casually, pretending to wring out his mop. Mia leans closer to the desk, speaking softly to herself as she organizes paperwork. It is almost a whisper, almost not meant for the world. But he hears every word. "Please just let today be the day I do not get yelled at. I cannot afford to lose this job. Not when Mom needs her medication, not when I am already late on rent again." Her voice breaks on the last word. Ethan freezes. Not a physical freeze, but the kind that stops the world in place. He has heard dozens of business pitches, negotiations, demands, threats. But he has not heard fear like that in a long, long time. Fear laced with dignity. Fear hidden behind a forced smile. He watches her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She checks her reflection in her computer screen, practicing a steadier expression before the next person approaches the desk. It is the kind of resilience that cannot be faked. Ethan feels something unfamiliar twist inside his chest. He came undercover, expecting complaints about strict rules or lazy employees slacking off. But Mia is doing everything right and still drowning. Her whisper echoes in his mind, unsettling him more than any boardroom crisis ever has. He wants to step forward. He wants to say something. But the script of his disguise forces him to remain silent. At that moment, the elevator dings. The operations manager storms out, barking orders before he even sees her. Mia straightens immediately, shoulders tense, hands folded in front of her like a student expecting punishment. Ethan grips the mop handle until his knuckles turn white. He understands now that something is deeply wrong here. And that Mia, the woman who whispered her fear into the cold air, might be the key to everything he needs to uncover. And as he watches her endure another wave of harsh words, he realizes, this is no longer about company morale. This is personal. The lobby returned to its usual rhythm, but Ethan Carter did not. He kept mopping slowly, deliberately, giving himself an excuse to stay close enough to observe Mia without breaking the illusion of his disguise. The operations manager continued barking instructions, as if the building belonged solely to his voice. Mia responded with quiet professionalism, apologizing for things that were not her fault, enduring comments that were sharper than they needed to be. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he forced his shoulders to remain slouched the way a janitor's posture might look after years of physical work. He reminded himself that he was here undercover, not as a savior storming into a scene. If he acted too quickly, he would ruin everything he came to learn. Mia took a breath the moment the manager walked away. She rubbed her wrist as if the tension sat inside her bones. Then she lifted the visitor log and straightened the stack with soft determination, preparing for the next wave of people. She did not look up again. She did not see Ethan watching. He noticed the small details, the frayed edge of her cardigan sleeve, The way she stood on the balls of her feet when someone important passed, trying to appear more confident than she felt. The tiny bottle of over-the-counter pain medication tucked inside her drawer used far more than it should be. He also noticed when she reached for her phone during a lull, checking it quickly before hiding it again. The screen had displayed a message that flashed for only a second, but Ethan caught the words "pharmacy bill due today." His heartbeat changed. This was not a frivolous story of someone complaining about a long workday. This was survival. This was a woman carrying more than anyone should carry alone. A delivery man entered with 2 heavy boxes. Mia hurried from behind the desk to open the door for him. When he passed, she held the door with her shoulder so she could sign the clipboard at the same time. The moment he left, the door slipped, nearly hitting her. She steadied herself, whispered something under her breath, and returned to her station with a small laugh that tried to hide how overwhelmed she felt. Ethan felt that same twist in his chest again. He had seen employees struggle before. Corporate America was filled with workers carrying silent burdens. But Mia's burden felt different. It was in her voice. It was in the way she kept trying even when no one thanked her. He stepped toward her desk with his mop and bucket. She glanced at him with a polite smile, the kind given to people who are usually overlooked. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice was tired but kind. Ethan nodded, forcing himself to stay in character. "Morning," he replied in a deliberately plain tone. A group of executives walked through the lobby. Mia stood straighter again, offering them her usual warm greeting. They barely made eye contact. One of them left his empty coffee cup on the counter without acknowledging her. Ethan watched her pick it up, place it gently into a trash bin, and return to her posture of polite invisibility. Everything inside him pushed against the disguise. He wanted to tell her that she deserved respect. He wanted to call back the executive and demand an apology. He wanted to reach across the desk and say, "You matter here." But he could not. Not yet. Instead, he lifted his mop again, giving himself another excuse to stay by her side. As he worked, he heard her hum quietly, almost unconsciously, a soft melody shaped by exhaustion. It was a sound of someone who carried hope even in the smallest threads of her day. Then her phone buzzed again. She read the message, and her eyes dimmed. Ethan did not see the words this time, but he saw the effect. Her shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch, like a person staring at a door that kept closing no matter how hard she pushed. She whispered again, thinking no one could hear. One sentence. Barely audible. "Please just let me make it through this month." The mop stopped in Ethan's hand. He felt the weight of those words more heavily than the weight of any company he had ever built. He came undercover to look for problems inside his corporation. Instead, he had found a person. A person whose life was quietly unraveling right in front of him. And Ethan Carter, a man who had once believed he understood the struggles of his employees, realized that he had never truly listened. For the rest of the morning, Ethan stayed close enough to observe without drawing attention. Every interaction, Mia had painted a clearer picture of a workplace where kindness survived only because she insisted on carrying it. She greeted visitors with a warmth that never reached her own, tired eyes, answered phones with steady professionalism, and offered help even when no one offered it back. By late morning, the lobby grew busier. A client arrived early for a meeting and grew irritated when the conference room was still being prepared. Mia apologized repeatedly even though she had no control over scheduling. The client sighed loudly, muttered something under his breath, and walked away without saying thank you. Ethan felt that familiar tension in his jaw. He wanted to step in, but he reminded himself that he was supposed to be invisible. A janitor interfering with a client would raise questions he could not afford. A few minutes later, Mia returned to sorting mail behind the desk. She opened a small drawer, pulled out a laminated card, and whispered a line to herself as if she had memorized it for survival. "You control what you can. Breathe through what you cannot." Ethan recognized the tone. It was not motivation. It was coping. A sudden cough escaped her sharp enough that she covered her mouth and leaned forward. When she straightened, her eyes glistened for a moment before she blinked the fatigue away. She reached for a small thermos and took a sip of what looked like instant coffee. The lid rattled because her hands were shaking. She was pushing herself far past normal limits, and Ethan knew it. In the early afternoon, the operations manager returned, holding a stack of folders. He placed them on Mia's desk with more force than necessary. "These need to be sorted by department before the end of the day," he said. "And do not make the same mistake as yesterday." Mia nodded quickly, even though she had no idea which mistake he meant. "Yes, sir." Ethan noticed the way she winced when the folders hit the desk. He also noticed the bruise on her wrist that had not been there earlier. It was faint, but it told a story of stress and strain, not physical harm, but the slow erosion of a person who was carrying too much. When the manager left a small envelope slipped from the pile, Mia caught it before it fell, and Ethan saw her breath hitch when she read the return address. The local health clinic. She opened it quietly and slid the paper halfway out. Even from where he stood, Ethan could see the red wording through the envelope window. Outstanding balance. Past due. Ethan's chest tightened. He had seen employees struggle financially, but seeing it this closely, seeing the impact on one individual, made it painfully real. Mia folded the envelope and tucked it under a stack of notepads as if hiding it would make the debt disappear. She exhaled slowly, then straightened her posture again, preparing to greet another group of visitors. Her resilience was remarkable. Her exhaustion was unmistakable. As Ethan watched her, something shifted in him. He had always believed he was a fair leader. He believed that his generous benefits package and company programs were enough. But standing here, disguised as a janitor, he saw what he had never been able to see from the executive floor. People like Mia were still falling through the cracks. People who worked hard, who showed up every single day, who held the company together with small acts of responsibility no one ever acknowledged, and they were drowning quietly. A printer jammed in the mailroom beside the lobby. Ethan stepped inside to fix it, giving himself a private space to breathe. His heart was beating differently now, not with frustration or judgment, but with responsibility. He took a slow breath, remembering the whisper he heard earlier that morning. "Please just let me make it through this month." He had never heard a sentence so heavy spoken so softly. When he returned to the lobby, Mia was still working, still smiling, still holding everything together. This time she glanced at him a little longer. There was no recognition, no suspicion, only kindness. "Thank you for keeping the floors clean," she said gently. "I know people do not say it often, but I appreciate it." Ethan did not expect gratitude. Certainly not today. He swallowed, steadying his voice. "You are welcome." Something inside him settled into a decision he could not fully understand, yet only feel. This undercover mission was no longer about identifying weaknesses in his company. It was about understanding the people who kept it alive. And Mia Turner, she was the beginning of that truth. The afternoon sun moved across the lobby windows, casting long rectangular patterns on the floor. By then, Ethan had been in his disguise for nearly 5 hours, long enough for his back to ache from bending over a mop he had no real training to use. Yet, he did not mind. Every hour beside Mia Turner revealed something he would never have discovered from the top floor of this building. Around 3 o'clock, the pace shifted again. The receptionist phone rang non-stop, visitors crowded the front desk, and internal mail deliveries piled higher. Mia handled everything with calm efficiency, even though Ethan could see the fatigue tightening around her eyes. When a courier entered with a malfunctioning badge scanner, Mia apologized and jogged around the desk to help reset it. She explained the system with patience, even when the courier insisted it was the building's fault. She absorbed frustration the way a sponge absorbs water. Quietly, completely. Ethan swept near the front desk to stay within earshot. He saw the moment her hand brushed the corner of a drawer, and she winced. He remembered the bruise on her wrist. He remembered the overdue clinic bill tucked under her notepads. Her resilience was remarkable, but her resources were running dangerously thin. A few minutes later, the operations manager returned again. His tone had grown sharper with each appearance, as if the day itself fueled his impatience. He glanced at the unsorted folders on Mia's desk. "You are still on these," he snapped. Mia straightened immediately. "Yes, sir. I have been juggling visitor check-ins, phone calls, and—" He cut her off. "Excuses do not finish tasks." The lobby fell quiet. Even the elevator chimes seemed to wait. Ethan felt a steady burn rise in his chest. He tightened his grip on the mop, reminding himself that speaking up now would expose everything. A janitor confronting a manager would draw attention faster than a fire alarm. Mia lowered her gaze. "I understand, sir. I will catch up." The manager placed another folder on top of the existing stack and turned away without a single word of gratitude. Ethan watched Mia press her lips together to keep them from trembling. She inhaled through her nose, counted silently, and composed herself once more. She returned to her desk, sorting papers with quiet determination. This time, Ethan stepped closer. He did not speak. He simply began sweeping the small corner beside her desk, giving her a moment of human presence that did not demand anything. Mia noticed. A small, grateful smile tugged at one side of her mouth. "Some days feel heavier than others," she said softly. "But it helps when someone simply stands near you." Ethan felt the weight of that sentence settle deep inside him. She was not asking for money, praise, or even kindness. She was asking for a human moment. Something simple. Something that should have been normal. Before he could respond, a visitor approached the desk holding a broken badge clip. Mia greeted him with her usual warmth, fixing the issue quickly and sending him off with a smile. When she sat back down, she rubbed her temples. Her phone buzzed on the desk. She hesitated before picking it up. Ethan saw her expression change the moment she read the message. Her shoulders sank. She placed the phone face down as if the screen itself carried a burden. Ethan spoke carefully, keeping his tone appropriate for his disguise. "Is everything all right?" Mia startled, slightly surprised that the janitor was the one asking. She forced a small smile. "Yes, just life things." He did not push. He could not. But the truth was clear. Whatever message she received, it made the month she prayed to survive even harder. A gust of cold air drifted through the lobby as the main doors opened again. Mia shivered. She wrapped her thin cardigan tighter around herself, but it did little against the chill. Ethan noticed the way she rubbed her arms, trying to warm herself while staying composed. He leaned on the mop handle for a moment, fighting the urge to act. The disguise forced him to move slower than his instincts wanted. Mia whispered again, thinking no one could hear her. "Mom, I promise I will figure this out." Her voice cracked at the end. Ethan closed his eyes for a brief second. He could not stand there any longer, pretending he did not hear. Pretending he did not care. He came undercover to study his company. Now he was studying her. Her strength. Her worry. Her quiet endurance. And he knew one truth with absolute clarity. This story was no longer only about the company's problems. It was about the woman behind the front desk whose whispered prayers had opened his eyes. The day stretched into the late afternoon, and the lobby lights shifted to a softer glow. Most employees felt the slump that came around 4 o'clock, but Mia Turner did not slow down. She kept moving, kept helping, kept carrying burdens that should have belonged to an entire team, not one exhausted receptionist trying to survive another day. Ethan watched her from a short distance, pretending to wipe down a railing. By now, he understood that Mia lived inside a storm of responsibilities that never seemed to stop circling her. And yet, she continued to greet people with a gentleness that seemed out of place in a corporate building. A delivery of office supplies arrived heavier than expected. The courier left the boxes right by the entrance, blocking the walkway. Before Ethan could volunteer to move them, Mia hurried over. "I can take care of those," she said, though her voice betrayed how tired she was. She bent down and tried to push one of the boxes aside. It barely shifted. Ethan stepped forward quickly, masking his concern behind the calm, unimportant tone of a janitor. "I can handle that," he said. Mia stepped back with visible relief. "Thank you. I appreciate it." He moved the boxes easily, but he kept his performance modest. A janitor should look capable, not suspiciously strong for someone supposedly paid by the hour. When he finished, Mia smiled again, a small but genuine expression. "It means a lot," she said. Ethan nodded, but inside something shifted again. Her gratitude for such a basic act struck him harder than it should have. It told him she rarely received help. It also told him she rarely asked for it. The lobby quieted for a moment as visitors cleared. Mia finally sat down, shoulders falling in a moment of rest. She opened her drawer and pulled out a small meal container. Inside was nothing more than a simple peanut butter sandwich and a handful of crackers. She ate slowly, almost rationing each bite. Her phone buzzed again. She paused, hesitating before reading the message. This time, Ethan watched her posture freeze. She closed her eyes, absorbing whatever news had just hit her. When she opened them again, they shimmered. She whispered so quietly that only someone standing as close as Ethan could hear. "I cannot cover it. I cannot do this anymore." Ethan felt the words pierce through him. Every instinct inside him wanted to step out of his disguise, offer help, and tell her she did not have to carry this alone. But he held himself still. The truth would come, but not yet. He needed to understand her world first. He needed to see what his employees truly lived through. The elevator dinged and the operations manager returned once more, almost as if summoned by stress. He tapped the desk sharply. "Mia, the conference room upstairs is out of water. You should have checked that." She blinked in confusion. "I did restock it this morning, sir." "Then do it again. And do not let this happen tomorrow." Ethan watched Mia rise, apologize, and hurry toward the supply room. Her cardigan slipped off her shoulder, exposing the faint bruise again. She pulled it back up quickly, hoping no one noticed. Ethan noticed. When she disappeared upstairs, he leaned on his mop and exhaled slowly. The building hummed around him, filled with small sounds he had never paid attention to before. Footsteps. Phones ringing. Printers clicking. Lives unfolding in ways he had not truly seen until today. He understood now why the anonymous letter had reached him. He understood why his employees had been struggling. They were not failing. They were drowning. And people like the operations manager were pushing them deeper without ever realizing the damage. 15 minutes later, Mia returned slightly out of breath. She sat down and rubbed her wrist again. She tried to steady her breathing before anyone noticed her fatigue. When she glanced at Ethan, her expression softened. "Today feels longer than usual," she said with a weak laugh. He responded quietly, "Some days demand more than others." Mia nodded. "I will be fine. I always find a way." But her voice did not carry confidence. It carried survival. As Ethan watched her push through the rest of her shift, he realized that undercover work had never been about learning statistics or uncovering inefficiencies. It was about meeting the people who kept the company alive. And Mia Turner was not just another employee. She was the mirror reflecting everything he had overlooked. The clock in the lobby inched toward 5 o'clock, that quiet hour when the building settled into a low hum. Most departments wound down their work, but the front desk remained steady. Mia Turner's shift never truly slowed, even when her body clearly begged for rest. Ethan continued wiping down surfaces near the desk, keeping himself close enough to observe without breaking his cover. He noticed that Mia had not taken a single real break. He noticed she drank water only twice. He noticed she never once complained. When the elevator doors opened again, a group of senior staff walked through, laughing loudly about their dinner reservations. One of them left a coffee cup on the counter directly in front of her. Mia smiled politely, threw it away, and wished them a good evening. They did not respond. Ethan felt that same pull inside his chest, a quiet ache he could no longer ignore. He had spent years in leadership, believing he understood his workforce. But spending a single day in disguise taught him more truth than a decade in meetings ever had. A moment later, Mia received a call on the front desk phone. She straightened her posture instantly. "Carter Holdings front desk, this is Mia speaking. How may I assist you?" She listened for a few seconds, and her expression shifted. Concern flickered across her eyes. She wrote something down quickly. "Yes, I understand. I will check on that right away." She hung up slowly. Ethan stepped forward, still pretending to scrub a railing. "Is something wrong?" he asked, keeping his voice mild. Mia glanced at him, hesitating. "The clinic called. My payment did not go through. They need the balance cleared before they can continue my mother's treatment." She said the last part with a steady voice, but her hands trembled when she set the phone back in its cradle. For a moment, she looked like she might fall apart, but she swallowed hard and forced her focus back to work. Ethan knew then that her exhaustion was not simply workplace stress. It was the weight of family responsibility pressing against her at all hours. And she was carrying it alone. The operations manager appeared again, holding a clipboard. He pointed to a stack of visitor forms on her desk. "These are not alphabetized." "Fix it." Mia blinked, confused. "I completed those an hour ago, sir." "Then do it again. And next time check twice before saying you are done." He turned on his heel and walked away. Mia stared at the stack of forms, breathing slowly as she tried to maintain her composure. Ethan saw her shoulders tremble for half a second before she steadied them again. He could not intervene. Not yet, but the urge grew stronger by the minute. She began fixing the forms, though they had been alphabetized perfectly the first time. Every now and then she paused to rub her wrist, the bruise beneath her cardigan sleeve darkening as the day wore on. As she worked, she whispered, something so softly he barely caught it. "Please let tomorrow be easier." Her voice held a kind of tired hope that broke him more than any financial report ever had. When a small group of interns entered the lobby with folders, Mia stood up immediately. "Welcome. How can I help you?" One of the interns explained that they needed access to a conference room. Mia walked them through the sign-in process and handed them badges. She smiled, wished them luck on their presentation, and watched them disappear into the elevator. Only after they left did her smile fade. Ethan approached slowly, making his movements look as routine as possible. He wiped the counter near her desk. "You help a lot of people," he said gently. Mia looked surprised that someone as invisible as a janitor noticed. "It is my job," she replied. "That does not mean it is easy." She gave a small, tired smile. Nothing worth doing is ever easy. He wanted to tell her she deserved better. He wanted to tell her that her strength was not invisible. But revealing that now would ruin everything he was trying to understand. Mia returned to her paperwork. Ethan stepped back, observing her with renewed clarity. This was more than a difficult workday. This was a woman holding an entire world on her shoulders while standing in a lobby no one truly saw. And Ethan Carter, the millionaire hidden in plain sight, realized that tomorrow would not get easier unless someone finally stepped forward to change something. By the time the lobby clock reached 5:45, most of the building had emptied. The polished hallways that once echoed with constant footsteps had gone quiet, leaving only the faint hum of air vents and the occasional elevator chime drifting across the space. Mia Turner remained at her desk, finishing tasks that should have belonged to an entire team. Her shoulders slumped ever so slightly now that fewer people were watching. She rubbed her temples, then her wrist, trying to ease the strain of another long day. Ethan saw how she tried to hide the pain, but she was too tired to mask it completely. He continued wiping down nearby surfaces to stay close. Being undercover required silence, patience, and restraint, yet every part of him wanted to sit beside her and simply say, "You do not have to carry this alone." But the time had not come. Mia gathered the final stack of visitor forms, smoothing out the edges before placing them in a binder. Her movements were careful, almost ceremonial, as if finishing this task allowed her to breathe again. As she closed the binder, her phone buzzed once more. She reached for it hesitantly, bracing herself for more bad news. When she read the message, her breath hitched. She whispered, barely audible, "I cannot pay that tonight. Please be patient with me." Her eyes glistened in the dim lobby light, and she pressed her lips together to keep them from trembling. Ethan felt something inside him break. Until this moment, he had only witnessed her struggle. Now he could feel it. Mia set the phone down and stared at her hands. For the first time all day, she looked truly defeated. A moment later, the operations manager stormed out of the elevator, his voice slicing through the quiet. "Mia, why are the hallway signs not updated yet? I sent that request last week." She straightened instantly. "I never received that request, sir." "Check again," he snapped. "I am tired of repeating myself." He walked off without waiting for a response. Mia exhaled slowly, her shoulders shaking for just a second before she caught herself. She opened her inbox and scrolled through hundreds of messages, searching for something that was never sent. Ethan stepped closer, pretending to clean the side panel of the front desk. "You work very hard," he said softly. Mia looked up, startled that anyone had noticed, let alone a janitor. She forced a small smile. "I try," she said. "Some days feel endless, but I cannot afford to fall behind." Her honesty came out before she could stop it. Perhaps exhaustion made her more open, or perhaps the kindness in his voice finally cracked the wall she held up all day. She glanced around to make sure no one else was within earshot. "My mother's health depends on me. Losing this job is not an option." Ethan held the mop handle a little tighter to keep from reacting. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just need 1 month to catch up. Just one." Ethan felt the weight of every hour he had watched her struggle. He had gathered information today more than any report or survey could have provided. But understanding was no longer enough. The quiet lobby made her next words sound even heavier. I wish someone would just see how hard I am trying. Ethan felt the sentence settle in the space between them. She believed she was invisible. She believed her effort disappeared into the background the same way he did in his janitor uniform. But he saw her. He saw everything. Mia straightened again when footsteps echoed from the hallway. She returned to her professional posture, ready for whatever the evening hours demanded next. Ethan knew the moment for silence was ending. The reveal was approaching, even if Mia did not know it yet, because after what he witnessed today, he understood one truth: tomorrow he would not remain invisible. The building continued to empty until only a handful of lights remained glowing across the upper floors. The lobby grew calmer, its earlier chaos replaced by a quiet stillness that made every small sound echo. Mia Turner exhaled slowly, as if the silence itself reminded her of how exhausted she truly was. Ethan stayed close, wiping down a table that did not need cleaning. He did not want to leave. Not when Mia sat hunched over her desk reviewing tasks that should have ended hours ago. She looked toward the glass doors, watching the outside world darken. Then she glanced at the clock. Her shift should have ended 20 minutes earlier, but she kept working anyway. She pulled open a drawer, took out a small notebook, and wrote something inside it. Ethan leaned slightly, careful not to reveal his curiosity. He saw a list written in narrow handwriting: rent, medication, clinic bill, phone bill, food. She stared at the list as if deciding which of the essentials she could live without. Then she whispered something that tightened Ethan's chest. I can skip dinner tonight. She closed the notebook quickly when the elevator chimed. A senior executive walked through the lobby and dropped a stack of envelopes on Mia's desk. I need these logged and sorted by tomorrow morning. Make sure everything is correct. Mia nodded without hesitation, even though her shift had already ended. Yes, I will take care of it. The executive walked off without acknowledging her fatigue. Ethan watched the exchange with growing heaviness. For the entire day she had been stretched beyond what any reasonable employer should expect, yet she still responded with calm professionalism. He had seen her kindness, her patience, her resilience, and now he had seen her breaking point. Mia rubbed her eyes, blinking to stay awake. Her voice wavered when she spoke, even though she tried to hide it. It will be fine. I will get through it. She whispered it, as if trying to convince herself. Ethan approached, pretending to empty a nearby trash bin. You have been here all day, he said gently. You should rest. She gave a tired smile. Rest is a luxury lately. Her honesty struck him again. It was always honesty with her, even when wrapped in exhaustion. She did not realize how revealing her words were. The lobby lights flickered slightly, signaling the automatic evening cycle. Mia gathered her things, but when she stood, she swayed for a moment. Ethan instinctively stepped forward. Are you all right? He asked. She steadied herself with a hand on the desk. Yes. Just a long day, that is all. But it was not just a long day, it was a long life, compressed into hours. She put on her thin cardigan, bracing herself for the cold evening outside. As she reached for her bag, her phone buzzed again. She checked it, and Ethan saw her expression collapse for the first time. Her mother's name appeared on the screen. Mia listened quietly, her voice trembling as she said, I know, Mom. I will figure it out. Please do not worry. When she hung up, she closed her eyes, holding back a wave of emotion. Ethan felt the moment deepen inside him. This was no longer simply empathy. This was responsibility. He had created a company that allowed people like Mia to slip into hardship without anyone noticing. Tonight he noticed. She gathered her coat and turned toward the doors. Her steps were slow but determined, the stride of someone who refused to collapse even when their world leaned against them. Ethan watched her walk away, knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow he would not be sweeping floors. Tomorrow she would finally learn the truth. The next morning, Carter Holdings buzzed with its usual weekday energy, but Ethan Carter entered the building with a different pace, a different purpose. He was no longer wearing the faded janitor uniform. Today he stepped through the glass doors in a tailored charcoal suit, the kind that signaled leadership before he even spoke. Employees straightened when they saw him, offering polite greetings mixed with surprise. No one had expected the CEO to appear unannounced. But Ethan was not looking for attention. He was looking for Mia Turner. He walked toward the lobby, slowly watching the familiar space reveal itself through an entirely different lens. Yesterday he had been invisible. Today he was the most visible man in the building. Yet the weight in his chest remained the same, carried from the moment he first heard her whispered prayer. Mia was already at the front desk organizing the morning mail with her usual quiet diligence. Her cardigan looked thinner today, and her eyes held shadows from a night without rest. When she looked up and saw him approaching, she froze. She had seen his picture in company newsletters. She had heard his name spoken with reverence and with fear. But she had never spoken to him directly. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice catching slightly. Ethan offered a gentle nod. "Good morning, Mia." Her confusion deepened. She had not expected him to know her name. Before she could ask anything, the operations manager rushed over, suddenly eager to impress. "Mr. Carter, sir, if you need anything I can." Ethan raised a hand. "I will speak with Mia first." The manager stepped back, startled. Ethan turned to her fully. "May we talk for a moment?" Mia swallowed nervously. "Of course, sir." He led her a few steps away from the desk, just far enough for privacy but not secrecy. Her hands tightened around the folder she held, preparing for reprimand, for disappointment, for anything except what he was about to say. "Mia," he began, "I was in this lobby all day yesterday." She blinked. "I did not see you. That is because I did not want to be seen." Her breath caught. Her eyes widened just slightly. Ethan continued, his voice steady and sincere. "I was here undercover. I needed to understand how this building truly operates, how people are treated, how our culture functions beyond what reports tell me." Mia's lips parted. Her heartbeat quickened. You were the janitor?" "Yes." Silence spread between them, soft and disbelieving. Ethan held her gaze gently. "I heard everything you whispered. I saw everything you carried, and I saw how much you give to this place, even when it gives you very little in return." Mia felt her face heat, embarrassment and relief colliding. She looked down, unsure what to say. "You should never have to choose between your health, your mother's health, and your job," Ethan said. "That is a failure of leadership." "My failure." Her eyes lifted slowly. Ethan reached into his jacket and handed her a small envelope. "This is not charity. This is restitution. Inside is an immediate stipend, approval for medical support, and a promotion to administrative coordinator. Your workload will be adjusted, and your salary will reflect the work you have already been doing." Mia stared at the envelope as if it did not belong in her hands. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "You already said it yesterday," Ethan replied softly. "You wished someone would see how hard you are trying. I see it, and I will not ignore it." Emotion shimmered in her eyes, but she held herself steady. The operations manager lingered nearby, pale with worry. Ethan turned to him briefly. "We will discuss your conduct later." The manager slipped away quickly. Mia looked at Ethan again. "Thank you." "Truly." He nodded. "No one should carry the weight you carried alone." For the first time in a long time, her shoulders relaxed. Her breath eased. Hope flickered where exhaustion once lived. As she returned to her desk, Ethan watched her with quiet respect. Yesterday she had been invisible to those around her. Today the entire company would begin to change because of her. And the whispered sentence that had stopped him in his tracks would remain with him forever. "I wish someone would just see how hard I am trying." Now she knew someone had.